I live in Norway. Ask me anything.
Before we start, be sure to like and subscribe to be the first to know about new videos. Comment your answer below.
Is it as beautiful as the pictures I see online, in particular the Atlantic Road? It's my #1 dream place to go one day. I've actually never been to the Atlantic Roads, but I drove from Oslo, capital, to the most northern point in Europe, Nordkapp, on a motorcycle. And I can confirm, most of the scenery you see in pictures correlates to the real world. However, it is a lot of rural area and you most likely want to go to the rural area if you want the nice scenery. Oslo is okay, a good mix between urban culture and beautiful facades in the western part of Oslo, but I would recommend going to the fjords, or the Atlantic Road. English is not my first language, sorry. You are doing very well writing English. A lot better than I would any Slovak language. Is the quality of life really as good as I'm told there, and is everything really expensive? I would say the quality of life is very good. Of course we have to pay high taxes, complicated system where the richest pays 50% CA. And the average workers pays around 30%. We get a lot of free stuff like school, healthcare and other goods through our welfare system. I really appreciate how things are working in my country. Norway would be expensive for any foreigners, but we are getting a higher, relative, paycheck than people in other countries. So for us, it's normal that a Big Mac costs around $6. Smile. English is not my first language, sorry. Thank you. My friend worked in Norway and told me these things. I couldn't believe the prices of some things he told me about, like alcohol and cigarettes etc., but he also mentioned about the higher wage. Your English is great. There are a lot of weird taxes and fees we have to pay. Even for sugar. But cigs are pretty expensive here, around $10 a pack. What you're describing isn't all too much different to the UK. £10 a pack of cigs here too. Sugar tax etc. I heard of someone who lived near the border with Sweden and they drove to Sweden to buy food because it's cheaper apparently. Is that something people often do if it's close enough? Yeah. We all do, even if it is hours to drive. I live around 3 hours from the border and I have done that a lot of times myself. Wouldn't the price of petrol/gasoline to drive that far and back cost the same as just buying the food closer to home? Just curious. We buy so much at once. Especially candy and alcohol. And since it's almost free compared to Norway, it's definitely worth the trip. Really depends on how much you buy really. There are also some things that just are not sold in Norway, like specific candies or whatnot. The major selling point is the alcohol and tobacco though, as the prices in Norway are ludicrously high in comparison to the rest of the world. The only problem with the border hopping is getting caught with an overfilled quota. And to be frank, 99% of us drive back home with an overfilled quota. There are almost never border patrols, so usually all's good and all, but if you're unlucky you'll end up with quite the hefty fine. Usually, people drive in groups, and will have someone scout ahead to see if there's any border security. Some people who drive alone will sometimes bury their goods before crossing, and then come back and get it after confirming that the coast is clear. Despite our low crime and imprisonment rates, I think it's safe to assume most Norwegians have, at least once in their life, smuggled tobacco or alcohol over the Norwegian-Swedish border. How would you rate the food? 6/10. The food is okay, but not great. Mostly fish and traditional food like lamb with cabbage, lots of potatoes, stuff like that. As a fellow Norwegian, this is true for our traditional food, but we are really inspired by other countries and eat Mexican, Italian, Asian etc. A lot of Norwegians eat tacos on Fridays, and we call it fredagstaco, Friday taco. It's not really Mexican though, but it's good. Is it true that Norwegians are sick of tourists? No, we get a lot of Asian tourists in Oslo, but I don't think it is a problem, at least not for me. I can't say anything about the typical Norwegian attractions/places, simply because I don't live there. I am not. Where I come from we have Norway's last working steam engine train, and it might actually need to be shut down because the cruise ships don't have time to come there to take rides anymore. Sup fellow Norwegian. Just here to ask, if you could live in another country and or adopt something from another country where/what would it be? Hope that made sense. I am sleep deprived. Hey. I would probably move to a warmer place, because it's fucking cold here. Probably Greece or Spain. Not as a tourist, but I would love to learn more about their culture. Cold? I am a southerner. Do you live up north? I lived in Oslo, correctly studying at NTNU in Trondheim, was pretty damn cold in Oslo, -25? Pro tip, don't live so close to the ocean. It makes all the difference. What is the furthest north you have been? Also, what is the name of traditional potato whiskey you drink on cold days to warm up your insides? Thanks in advance. I have been in Nordkapp, the furthest north you can get, and it was beautiful. And foggy. I'm not sure what kind of potato whiskey you're talking about. But we have a version that is basically moonshine and coffee mixed together. You might mean a kevet, or aquavit. It's not whiskey-like but liqueur made from potatoes. Yellow/golden color and really tasteful. It is called something like line aquavit. Has to go across the equator and back in oak casks. Ah, I'm not really into those types of spirits. Disgusting, tastes like rocket fuel. It does taste like rocket fuel. I did not care for it either, but I thought to be a true Norwegian you had to drink it. Ha! If you can go 100 meters on skis without falling and eat rakefisk with a straight face, then you're officially Norwegian. I tried some really nasty fish, not sure if it was rakefisk but it was bad. I must confess though I might be responsible for the sinking of your frigate a couple years ago. Sorry. I am planning a trip to Norway, American with Norwegian and Irish heritage, and I have been practicing the language as I believe it is only polite that you speak to people in their tongue if you go to their country, but OFCS Americans for the most part are vastly behind Western European nations in language skills. Do Norwegians typically get annoyed at English-speaking tourists? I'm sure many of you can speak English to some degree, but I could understand it being bothersome still. Hi. I think almost all Norwegians that you will encounter and talk to speaks English pretty well. I think the older generations has a harder time understanding English than the younger general would recommend to speak English if it was up to me.
You have been visited by Sad Cat. Like this video and subscribe to the channel to make Sad Cat happy again.